There's a strange pattern you may have noticed. The smartest person you knew in school, the one everyone said would change the world, disappeared. Not into fame, not into fortune, just gone. Off the grid, living quietly somewhere no one expected. Or maybe it's that coworker who used to dominate every meeting with brilliant ideas, and then one day stopped showing up, stopped posting, stopped engaging. And when you ask about them, people shrug and say, I think they moved to the countryside, or they're doing their own thing now. This isn't rare. It's a pattern. And Terence McKenna spent a significant part of his life trying to explain why this happens, why the people with the sharpest minds, the deepest questions, and the most original visions are often the first ones to quietly exit mainstream society. Not with anger, not with manifestos, just a slow, deliberate retreat into silence. If you've ever felt that pull yourself, that exhaustion with the noise, the performance, the endless shallow xinhuan, this video is for you. Because McKenna's warning wasn't just philosophical. It was personal. And it's more relevant now than ever. Let's talk about why intelligent people disappear. Reason 1. They see through the game, and it becomes unbearable. Intelligence isn't just about solving puzzles or memorizing facts. Real intelligence is pattern recognition. It's the ability to see the hidden structures beneath the surface, the scripts, the incentives, the manipulations that most people never question. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. McKenna talked about this constantly. He called modern culture a kind of software running on human hardware. And the more conscious you become, the more you notice the bugs in the code. You notice how conversations are scripted, how desires are manufactured, how outrage is farmed, how status is performed, how success is just a synonym for obedience dressed in an expensive suit. First, you try to explain it. You try to wake people up. But here's what happens. They don't want to hear it. Not because they're stupid, but because the game gives them identity, comfort, and community. To question the game is to question their entire life structure. And that's terrifying. So they resist. They mock. They label you cynical or negative or overthinking. And eventually you stop talking. Not because you've given up on truth, but because you've realized something deeper. Most people aren't looking for truth. They're looking for relief. And when you understand that, the exhaustion sets in. The exhaustion of pretending. The exhaustion of translating your thoughts into acceptable language. The exhaustion of watching people fight over things that don't matter while ignoring the things that do. And one day you just stop showing up. Not dramatically. Quietly, you stop arguing on the internet. You stop going to events that feel hollow. You stop forcing yourself to care about things you've outgrown. And from the outside, it looks like you disappeared. But really, you just stopped performing. Reason 2. The culture punishes depth. Here's a brutal truth McKenna understood. Modern society doesn't reward intelligence. It rewards compliance dressed as intelligence. Let me explain. If you're smart in a way that serves the system, if you can optimize profits, win arguments, build platforms, scale businesses, you'll be celebrated. You'll be called a genius. You'll get awards. But if you're smart in a way that questions the system, if you ask dangerous questions about meaning, purpose, power, or the nature of reality itself, you'll be marginalized. Not violently, subtly. Your ideas will be dismissed as impractical. Your concerns will be labeled unrealistic. Your depth will be misread as arrogance. Because the culture doesn't want philosophers. It wants engineers who don't ask why we're building what we're building. It doesn't want mystics. It wants therapists who help you cope without ever addressing the sickness of the structure itself. It doesn't want artists. It wants content creators who generate engagement without disturbing anyone. And if you're someone whose intelligence pulls you toward depth, toward meaning, mystery, and the big questions, you'll eventually hit a wall. You'll realize that every institution around you is designed to flatten you, to make you useful, to make you productive, to make you stop asking. And at that point, you have two choices. You can dull yourself. You can compress your thoughts into bite-sized pieces. You can learn to smile and nod and play along. Or you can leave. And the smartest people, they leave. They don't announce it. They don't burn bridges. They just quietly step out of the spotlight and into a life that allows them to think freely again. They trade status for sanity, visibility for authenticity, applause for silence. And from the outside, people say, "What a waste." But from the inside, it feels like finally being able to breathe. Reason 3, intelligence without community is lonely, so they build new ones. Let's be honest about something McKenna rarely sugarcoated. Being intelligent in a culture that worships distraction is isolating. You can't talk about what you're really thinking at dinner parties. You can't share what you're really reading in casual conversation. You can't express what you're really feeling without people looking at you like you've broken some unspoken rule. So you learn to split yourself. You have a social self that talks about weather, work, and weekend plans. And you have a real self that thinks about consciousness, mortality, systems, meaning, and the strange fact that you exist at all. And the gap between those two selves grows wider every year. Eventually, you realize, I'm surrounded by people, but I'm completely alone. That's when the quiet disappearance begins. Not because you hate people, but because you're exhausted from translating yourself into a version they can tolerate. So you start seeking out different spaces, smaller circles, people who speak your language, people who aren't afraid of silence, people who can sit with big questions without needing to solve them immediately. Sometimes you find them online, in corners of the internet that aren't algorithmically poisoned. Sometimes you find them in books, conversations with the dead who understood what you're going through. Sometimes you find them in nature, where the absence of human noise feels like the presence of something truer. And sometimes you just find peace in solitude. Because here's the thing, intelligent people don't disappear because they hate society. They disappear because they've outgrown the version of society that's being sold to them, and they're building something quieter, slower, and more intentional in its place. McKenna did this himself. He retreated to Hawaii. He spent his later years in botanical sanctuaries, surrounded by plants and ideas instead of crowds and careers. Not because he gave up, but because he chose a different kind of life. A life where depth was possible, where stillness was respected, where intelligence wasn't a performance. And that's not disappearing. That's waking up. Reason 4. They realize time is the only real currency. Here's something most people don't understand until it's too late. Your attention is your life. Not metaphorically, literally. Where your attention goes, your experience goes. Your memory goes. Your sense of meaning goes. And intelligent people tend to figure this out earlier than most. They look around and see a world designed to steal attention. Social media, news cycles, productivity culture, outrage engines, endless content, infinite scroll. And they realize, if I give my attention to this, I'll spend my entire life reacting instead of creating, consuming instead of contemplating, distracted instead of deep. So they make a choice. They delete apps. They cancel subscriptions. They stop attending events that drain them. They stop following people who make them feel worse. They stop engaging with platforms that reward anger and punish nuance. And from the outside, it looks like they checked out. But really, they checked in to their own life. Because McKenna was right about one thing above all. Culture is not your friend. Culture wants your time, your energy, your attention, your compliance. And it will take all of it if you let it. The intelligent ones realize this early. And they disappear not from life but from the machine. Reason 5. They stop seeking validation and start seeking truth. Most people live their entire lives performing for an invisible audience. They choose careers based on what sounds impressive. They share opinions that make them look smart. They curate identities that maximize approval. But intelligent people eventually hit a point where they ask a different question. What if I stopped caring what anyone thought? Not in a rebellious, egotistical way, but in a deeply honest way. What if I pursued the questions that actually fascinated me, even if they led nowhere useful? What if I stopped optimizing my life for status and started optimizing it for curiosity, depth, and peace? What if I let go of the need to be seen, heard, and applauded and just existed? That question is dangerous, because once you ask it sincerely, everything changes. You stop going to events you don't enjoy. You stop reading books everyone says you should read. You stop pretending to care about things that bore you. You stop performing. And when you stop performing, people stop seeing you. Not because you disappeared, but because they were never looking at you in the first place, they were looking at your performance. And this is McKenna's deepest warning. The version of you that society celebrates is not the real you. It's a distortion, a mask, a brand. And if you spend your whole life trying to perfect that mask, you'll die without ever meeting yourself. So the intelligent ones take it off. They step out of the spotlight. They stop chasing applause. They stop defending their choices to people who wouldn't understand them anyway. And they disappear into a life that's quieter, stranger, and infinitely more real. So what do you do with this information? If you're someone who's felt this pull, the exhaustion, the isolation, the quiet desire to step away, you're not broken. You're not cynical. You're not giving up. You're waking up. And McKenna's message to you is simple. Don't fight the urge to disappear. Follow it, but do it consciously. Don't disappear into bitterness or nihilism. Disappear into depth, into curiosity, into creation. Build a life that doesn't need an audience. A life that doesn't need validation. A life that feels true even when no one's watching. Because that's the life intelligent people have been quietly building for centuries. Not loud, not famous, not successful by conventional standards, but awake, alive, and free. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most intelligent thing anyone can do. Final thought. McKenna once said, "The cost of sanity in this society is a certain level of alienation." And he was right. The smarter you get, the weirder the world looks, the lonelier it feels, the more tempting it becomes to just leave. But here's the twist. When intelligent people disappear from society, they don't vanish from existence. They become the quiet architects of something new. They write the books no one asked for. They build the communities no algorithm surfaces. They live the experiments the culture refuses to try. And someday, maybe not today, maybe not in this lifetime, those experiments become the new normal. So if you're thinking about disappearing, don't feel guilty. The world doesn't need more performers. It needs more people brave enough to stop performing. That's McKenna's warning. And his invitation. What will you do with it?